The rain came down in oily sheets, smearing the windshield like some greasy hand refusing to let go. Kyle Morgan, a long-haul trucker with 20 years on the road and lungs full of diesel fumes, blinked at the neon glow ahead. Betty's Diner, open 24/7, the flickering sign buzzed like a dying insect, casting a pale, sickly light across the roadside gravel. The diner squatted beside the highway like a forgotten relic, chrome rusting at the edges, windows fogged from within. No other cars in the lot. Just his Freightliner and the endless stretch of I-20 vanishing into blackness behind him. Kyle checked his phone. No signal. Again. And his dashboard clock still read 2:17 a.m. Same as it had since Abilene. Probably a glitch. Or maybe just the kind of weird crap that happened at this hour. He sighed, rubbed his face and pushed open the truck door. The rain had stopped the moment he turned off the ignition. The air smelled off. Not just damp asphalt and wet sagebrush. Something older, like mildew and long-rotted meat. He shoved the thought away, his boots crunching against the gravel as he walked up to the entrance. The moment he opened the door, a bell jingled overhead, sharp and shrill. The warmth inside hit him like a wall, too warm like someone had left the ovens on too long. "Welcome to Betty's," a woman chirped from behind the counter. Her smile was painted on, wide and glossy, teeth too perfect. Her name tag read Rhonda in big red script. Kyle gave her a polite nod and slid into the nearest booth. The vinyl stuck to his jacket. Across the diner, half a dozen patrons sat scattered in the booths and stools, motionless save for the occasional slow sip of coffee or methodical bite of pie. No one looked up. Rhonda approached, notepad in hand. "What can I get you, hon? You look tired." "Just coffee, thanks," Kyle muttered, glancing at the wall clock. 2:17 a.m. The second hand twitched but never moved. "Comin' right up," she sang, turning back toward the counter. He watched her go. Her movements were off. Too smooth. Too rehearsed. Like someone playing a human being instead of being one. The jukebox in the corner croaked out an old Patsy Cline song, looping the same verse again and again. Kyle rubbed his eyes. Maybe he was just exhausted. Then he looked at the man in the booth across from him. The man's head was slumped forward, a plate of untouched food in front of him. His skin had a waxy gray hue, and his fingers were curled like claws against the table. Kyle's heart stuttered. Was he asleep? He squinted. There was no rise or fall of breath. No movement at all. Then he noticed something else. A fly landed on the man's eye. He didn't blink. Rhonda returned with the coffee. "Everything all right, sugar?" she asked, setting it down. Kyle forced a smile, voice dry. "That guy over there, is he okay?" Rhonda followed his gaze, still smiling. "Oh, he's just a regular. Doesn't look like he's breathing." She giggled. "None of them do, sweetie. They've been here a long, long time." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And now, so will you." The bell above the door jingled again. But no one had walked in. Kyle turned slowly toward the windows. Outside, the highway was gone, replaced by endless black fields and a moon that hadn't moved since he arrived. His coffee steamed. The clock still read 2:17 a.m. And behind him, every customer had turned to face him at once. For a moment, Kyle couldn't move. The coffee mug in front of him trembled slightly in his hand, rattling against the saucer. Every single patron, every corpse, now faced him, their eyes vacant, milky, and too wide open. Their jaws hung slack. Dried lips stretched over teeth like ancient leather, as if they'd forgotten how to close their mouths. The jukebox hissed static. Patsy Cline's voice warped into a slow, slurred moan before cutting off with a mechanical choke. Kyle pushed away from the booth. "What the hell is this?" Rhonda didn't flinch. She just smiled that same too-wide smile and took a step back. "We serve everyone here, sugar. No judgment. Even the forgotten." He backed toward the door. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm done. I'm leaving." Rhonda's eyes didn't blink. "Doors don't open after the clock stops, Kyle." He froze. "I didn't tell you my name." The lights in the diner flickered, once, twice, then dimmed to a sickly yellow glow. The walls seemed closer. The air was thicker now, buzzing with something unseen, something crawling just beneath perception. Kyle reached for the door handle. It wouldn't budge. He pulled harder. It stayed firm, cold like iron welded shut. He turned. The windows no longer showed the world outside. They reflected something else entirely, dark silhouettes twisting in slow circles, like shadows drowning in syrup. No rain. No road. Just that endless field of black stretching in all directions, moonlight smeared across a sky that had forgotten to turn. Rhonda was gone. The counter was empty. The patrons began to stand, one by one. The man with the fly still perched on his eyeball was first. His neck cracked loudly as his head rolled upright, and a grotesque smile cracked open his stiff face. A young woman in a waitress uniform from the 1950s stood next, her eyes sunken, her flesh pale and bruised like she'd drowned decades ago. They moved slowly, like puppets testing their strings. Kyle bolted for the kitchen, his boots slamming against linoleum as he tore through the swinging doors. Behind him, the sound of footsteps, bare feet slapping wetly against tile, followed close behind. The kitchen was dim, cast in shadows that didn't match the angles of the overhead lights. Fryers hissed though nothing was cooking. The smell of old grease and copper filled the air, like blood left to spoil in a cast-iron skillet. He grabbed a butcher's knife from the counter and held it up, breath ragged. Something moved past the fridge. Not walked. Slithered. He turned. There was nothing. Just flickering bulbs and a floor that looked wet with something thicker than water. Then he saw the back door. An exit sign glowed red above it like a wound. He rushed toward it, nearly slipping on the slick floor, and shoved his shoulder into the door. It didn't open. It wasn't a door anymore. Just a painting of a door nailed to the wall. He stumbled backward, heart hammering. That's when the voice came, from nowhere and everywhere at once. Oh, hello. Older than language. You don't get to leave. Not until you remember why you came. Kyle dropped the knife. The walls around him were changing. Tiles flaked away, revealing something pulsing underneath, like muscle. The chrome counters bled. And in the center of the room, where the grill had once stood, now rose a large, round dining table, set for 6. He stared, confused, until he saw the name card in front of one of the empty chairs. Kyle Morgan. The name was scrawled in blood. A plate of cold meatloaf sat before it. Steam rose from the mashed potatoes, but Kyle could smell the rot beneath the gravy. One by one, the dead patrons filed into the room. They took their seats around the table. Smiling. Waiting. Rhonda entered last, carrying a covered silver tray. Her eyes were black now, not dark but pitch black like tar pits under a dying sun. She set the tray before Kyle's chair and lifted the lid. Inside was a heart. Still beating. Not his. You forgot what you did, she whispered. You forgot what brought you here. But we didn't. Kyle backed away, trembling. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know any of you. You don't remember, Kyle. But they do. She motioned toward the diners. The drowned waitress removed her sunglasses. Her eye sockets were empty, hollowed out with burn marks around the edges. Kyle's breath hitched. That accident. The one 2 winters ago. He was driving through Amarillo. A snowstorm. A slick road. He dozed off at the wheel. 6 dead. He walked away. He never looked back. Never went to the funerals. Never even learned their names. The man with the fly in his eye? The old vet with the missing leg? He had flagged Kyle down after the crash. Kyle had driven off. Rhonda leaned in. Now you'll dine with them. One meal. Forever. Kyle screamed and bolted back through the diner. Everything was collapsing into itself now. The booths twisted into gaping mouths. The floor became black sludge sucking at his boots. The walls whispered names, endless names, each one spoken in a voice that knew him. He reached the front door again. And this time it opened. Just a crack. Enough for a sliver of gray dawn to pierce the gloom. Kyle hurled himself through it and hit pavement. When he opened his eyes, he was lying beside his truck. The rain was gone. The sky was pale. The sign above the diner flickered. Betty's Diner, open 24/7. He scrambled to his feet. The windows were black. No sign of life. No smell of coffee. No jukebox. Just silence. He climbed into his cab, turned the key. The engine roared to life. The dashboard clock read 6:42 a.m. As he pulled onto the road, he checked the diner in the mirror. It was gone. Only empty desert remained. But on the passenger seat beside him lay a crumpled name card. Kyle Morgan. And beneath it, smeared in something dark and sticky, the words, "See you at 217. The highway stretched endlessly before him, the kind of straight, empty Texan road that made you question whether you'd actually moved at all. Kyle gripped the wheel tighter. His knuckles were white. The truck's heater was blasting, but his skin crawled with a cold that seemed to come from the inside out. The name card still sat on the passenger seat. Kyle Morgan. Written in that same thick rust-colored ink. He reached for it once just to toss it out the window. But when his fingers touched it, he felt a pulse. A heartbeat. He yanked his hand back, eyes wide. Jesus Christ. His truck rumbled forward through the early dawn. The radio fizzed into life without warning, dial twisting on its own. Static, voices. Then, faintly, a soft song he'd heard just a few hours ago. Patsy Cline. I fall to pieces. He shut the radio off. But it kept playing. In his side mirror, a flicker, like something was sitting in the cab sleeper behind him. He didn't dare look back. Not yet. Kyle needed answers. Not hallucinations. He pulled out his phone and opened Google Maps. Typed in, Betty's Diner, Texas. Nothing. No results. No reviews. No address. He tried searching the highway number and the mile marker where he'd stopped. The map just glitched and returned him to the home screen. That's when he noticed something worse. The time on his phone, 2:17 a.m. The time on the truck's dash, 2:17 a.m. His watch, 2:17 a.m. Kyle slammed the brakes. The 18-wheeler screamed as tires skidded across the asphalt. Smoke curled up from the wheels and the cab rocked violently forward. He sat in silence, breath fogging the windshield. The world outside didn't move. Not the clouds. Not the wind. Not time. Then came the knock. From behind him. 3 slow raps. From inside the cab sleeper compartment. Kyle didn't move. A whisper followed, thin and childlike. You left us, Mr. Morgan. We didn't leave you. He spun around, yanked the curtain open. Nothing. Just the cramped space behind the driver's seat, empty as always. Except for something lying in the middle of the mattress. A diner menu. He picked it up, hands trembling. The cover read, Betty's Diner, open 24/7. Last meal served at 2:17 a.m. Inside, the menu wasn't food. It was a list of names. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Each one had a date and time beside it. Some from the 50s, others from last year. One in particular made Kyle's stomach turn. Morgan Kyle, February 18th, 2:17 a.m., 6 plates reserved. That was today. That was now. Kyle stepped out of the cab into the silent dawn, but the world didn't feel real anymore. No birds. No wind. No sun. Just an empty canvas. A loop frayed at the edges. He looked down the road behind him. And there it was again. The diner. Right where he left it. Lights glowing. Neon sign buzzing. Doors wide open. Except now it was much closer. Maybe a quarter mile. And he hadn't turned the truck around. Something had moved the diner. Or moved him. Kyle got back into the cab and turned the key. Nothing. The engine didn't even click. Dead. In the rearview mirror, headlights flicked on. But it wasn't a car. It was a hearse. Rusted. Black. And it was getting closer. The music came back, louder now and warped. I fall to pieces. I'm already gone. You're next in line. He jumped out of the truck and ran down the side of the road, not toward the diner, not toward the hearse, but into the desert. Sagebrush scraped his jeans. Rocks cut his hands as he stumbled. Still he ran. The sky above pulsed like a dying eye, a bruise spreading from horizon to horizon. Then he saw it. The trailer home. Broken windows. Rusted walls. A porch light blinking erratically. He sprinted for it, heart pounding like a drumbeat from hell. He didn't knock. He barged in. Inside, everything was frozen in time. A woman sat in an armchair, TV on in front of her, static playing. She didn't turn. Help me please, Kyle begged. Something's wrong, I can't get away. She turned slowly. Her eyes were empty sockets. And her voice was Rhonda's. You already died, Kyle. He backed out of the trailer. The world twisted. The sky split open above him like a curtain tearing in a theater. And he saw them. All of them. The 6 who died in the crash. The old vet, the drowned girl, the child in the back seat of that sedan. They stood in a circle. Around him. Why do you think the diner is always open? Rhonda's voice whispered from every direction at once. Because it feeds on guilt. On denial. You came here because you were hungry. Kyle fell to his knees. No. I didn't mean to. I didn't. But you did, the child said. His voice was soft. And you never came back. You never said sorry. The sky darkened completely. And in that moment, Kyle remembered everything. The crash. The scream. The fire. The broken windshield. And his truck, rolling past the wreckage as he told himself, it's too late to help. He had been running ever since. Kyle looked up, and saw the diner again, this time on fire, standing where the trailer had been. Above it, the sign still glowed. Open 24/7. We never forget. He tried to scream but his voice wouldn't come. Hands, cold, rotting, grabbed his arms, pulling him up. Rhonda was there holding a tray. I saved your seat, sugar. Let's go home. Kyle's feet dragged across the gravel as Rhonda led him back toward the burning diner. But the flames weren't consuming the structure. They danced in place, licking the windows, swirling around the roof, yet leaving the wood untouched. It was fire not meant to destroy but to illuminate, to reveal. And what Kyle saw chilled him more than death ever could. Through the glowing windows, the inside of Betty's diner looked bigger. Much bigger. What had been a cozy roadside eatery now stretched endlessly, a crimson-lit corridor lined with booths. The checkered floor went on for miles, vanishing into darkness. Shadows sat in every booth, their faces flickering in and out of existence, as if they were phantoms between realities. Kyle tried to pull away. Rhonda held on tighter. Her arm felt like brittle porcelain, but her grip was unbreakable. "You're lucky," she said sweetly. "Most don't get invited back. They just get served." "What is this place?" Kyle croaked. His throat felt raw like he'd been screaming for days. Rhonda gave a smile too wide for her face. "This ain't a place. It's a threshold." She pushed the glass door open. A brass bell rang. Ding, ding, ding. 3 times. The same chime he'd heard when he first arrived. The interior smelled of grease, blood, and old perfume. And waiting behind the counter was a figure Kyle hadn't seen before. She wore a 1950s waitress uniform, perfectly pressed and spotless white, though her skin was gray, her eyes hollow. Her hair was curled in victory rolls, and her smile was so wide it cut into her cheeks. A name tag sat proudly on her chest. "Betty." She turned to Rhonda. A runner." Rhonda nodded. "Tried to take the long road through the desert." Betty sighed. "They always do." Kyle stepped back toward the door, but it had vanished behind him. The diner's walls shifted again. He was inside, but no longer anywhere near a highway. The booths were now full. Not just with spirits, but servers, men and women in vintage uniforms, moving stiffly between tables, delivering meals that bled, steamed, or whispered. Some of the servers had empty eye sockets. Others had no mouths. Some dragged severed limbs, yet none seemed aware, or they didn't care. Kyle's stomach lurched. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Betty stepped out from behind the counter. Her heels didn't make a sound. "You passed through our door," she said, voice warm and syrupy. "You fed off our kindness and now we feed off you. That's how it works." She gestured to the booth in the far back. A corner seat sat empty. Kyle's name was carved into the table. "Every soul who carries guilt has a taste," Betty continued. "Yours? Abandonment, cowardice, denial. It's a delicious blend. And now, you owe us." She snapped her fingers. A mirror descended from the ceiling above his booth, wide and smeared with old handprints. Kyle was forced to look, and what he saw was himself, but aged, tired, pale, wearing a red and white striped uniform. He was one of the servers. "No," he said. "No, I'm not staying here." "You already are," Rhonda said, appearing beside him again. Betty leaned in close. "There are only 2 kinds of people here, sugar. The ones who feed, and the ones who serve." Kyle fell to his knees. All around him, the diner erupted into movement. Dishes clattered. The shadows in the booths turned their heads. One stood up. A man in a military uniform, face burned, skin peeling. The old vet. "You left me in that truck, Morgan," he rasped. "Watched me burn while you drove away." Another figure rose. The girl. Wet hair plastered to her face, eyes milky with death. "I called for help," she whispered. "You kept driving." More and more stood. They surrounded him. Not angry. Not vengeful. Hungry. Betty clapped her hands. "Enough reminiscing. Kyle, honey, your shift's starting." She held out a tray. He didn't take it. "I'm not dead," he hissed. "You think you've won, but I can fight this." Betty's smile widened into something inhuman. "Dead? No, dear. You're caught. Between guilt and judgment. Between forgiveness and damnation." The room rumbled. The diner's walls peeled away, revealing the void outside. A black, endless expanse speckled with floating highways, shattered clocks, and doors leading to other diners just like this one. "Every city has one," Betty said. "Some call them ghost restaurants. Others think they're just dreams. But we're always open. Always waiting for the next guilty traveler who thinks they've outrun the past." The temperature dropped. From the ceiling, a rope descended. Thick, frayed, and dripping with blood. A bell hung at its end. Betty looked to Kyle. "Last chance. Ring the bell and you accept your role." He didn't move. Betty narrowed her eyes. "Or..." She snapped her fingers. And the booth beneath him opened like a mouth, lined with jagged teeth made of license plates and broken glass. You go down. Kyle closed his eyes. Then without warning, he leapt to the side, grabbing the tray from Betty's hands and threw it into her face. The room shrieked. Betty reeled back, hissing as her porcelain skin cracked and black smoke hissed from the wounds. He ran. Through the aisle, past the gaping mouths of booths, toward a flickering neon sign at the end of the hall. Exit. Rhonda screamed. He's breaking the loop. Hands reached for him from under tables. Shadows clawed at his legs. But Kyle pushed forward, teeth gritted, heart thundering. He threw himself at the door. And everything shattered. He woke up in a ditch. Rain falling. Lights flashing. Paramedics shouting. Kyle gasped, coughing water, staring up at the night sky. A cop leaned over him. You're lucky to be alive, buddy. We found your rig jackknifed off the highway. Kyle sat up, shivering. The diner? There was a diner, Betty's? The cop frowned. No diner around here for miles. Closest one burned down 30 years ago. You must have hit your head hard. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, Kyle looked at his wrist. His watch blinked back at him. 2:18 a.m. For the first time, time had moved. But he felt something in his pocket. He reached in and pulled out a menu. Same as before. On the cover. Betty's Diner, always open. Inside. Just one name. Kyle Morgan, server. Below it in fresh red ink. Your next shift begins soon. The hospital lights were too bright. Everything buzzed, too clean, too alive. Kyle sat on the edge of the gurney, staring at the stained menu they'd pulled from his jacket. The paramedics hadn't said anything. They'd assumed it was just another hallucination from a head injury. But Kyle knew better. His hands trembled as he flipped through the menu again. There were no food items listed. No prices. No sections. Only names. Names that shifted slightly every time he blinked. A woman's name, Gloria Reeves, would vanish, replaced by Victor T. Hammond, then another and another. Hundreds of them. All scratched in faded ink across warped pages that smelled faintly of coffee, ash, and burnt meat. And at the bottom, below the ever-changing names. Kyle Morgan, server. A nurse tapped on the glass of his room. You've got a visitor. Kyle looked up. What? I said visitor. She says she's your sister. Kyle frowned. I don't have a sister. But before he could ask more, the door opened. And in walked Rhonda. Not burned. Not ghostly. Alive. Wearing a leather jacket, sunglasses, and a smirk. Hey there, sleepyhead, she said, plopping into the visitor's chair like she owned the place. Kyle recoiled. No. You're not here. You can't be. Oh, I'm here, she said. Pulled out of the ditch just like you. But I was never in the truck. Not really. That's not how this works. He clenched the menu tight. What are you? Rhonda leaned forward, her voice low. A recruiter. A survivor. A prisoner. Take your pick. I've done my time with the diner. Now I help train the next poor bastard. And that poor bastard, my friend, is you. I didn't accept anything. You didn't need to, she said. You took the tray. You made contact. That's how the diner binds you. Not death. Not choice. Just guilt and contact. Kyle's pulse pounded in his ears. No. I broke free. I escaped. Rhonda chuckled. Did you? She reached into her coat and pulled something out. It was a red and white striped napkin. Folded perfectly. Smelling of grease and rot. You think this is the real world? She asked. You think they let you out? She nodded toward the window. Kyle stood slowly and looked. The hospital parking lot was empty. The trees swayed gently. Streetlights flickered. But something was wrong. Too still. No traffic. No stars. Not even a breeze on the branches. Time was frozen. The clock on the wall. 2:17 a.m. Kyle's breath caught in his throat. This is one of the holding rooms, Rhonda said softly. A dream of the Real. Between your shifts they let you stay here, rest, pretend you've got your life back. But the moment you stop pretending, she pointed to the menu. It pulls you back. No, Kyle whispered. I'm not going back there. You will, Rhonda said. Not because they force you. Because they feed on what you carry. The guilt. The weight. The things you ran from on the road. Kyle sank to his knees. What do they want from me? They want you to serve. The fluorescent lights above flickered violently. The room darkened. Then from under the bed a bell rang. Ding, ding, ding. Rhonda stood. Time for your first table. The world peeled away. The hospital rotted in reverse. Walls turned to rust, tile to soot. The air became thick with the smell of grease, fear, and gasoline. When Kyle opened his eyes, he was standing in the diner again. Only now he wore the uniform. Red and white stripes. Paper hat. Name tag. Kyle. Server. The booths were full. A heavy silence hung over the place, thick as molasses. Betty stood at the counter, wiping a blood-slick mug with a napkin that never seemed to clean it. She looked up and smiled. Welcome back, sugar. Let's see if you can handle the rush. She snapped her fingers. A ticket printed from the ancient machine by the grill. It screeched like a dying animal as it spat out the order. Kyle approached and tore it off. Read. Table 9, Gloria Reeves. Last meal. He looked toward the back booth. There she was. A frail woman in her 60s, hunched over, clutching a cross necklace. Eyes hollow. Kyle recognized her. Years ago, she'd been the old woman he passed by on the highway shoulder during a storm. Her car had broken down. He hadn't stopped. He remembered the next day's headline, Local Woman Found Frozen in Car During Storm. No, he whispered. She's yours, Betty said. Your guilt. Your memory. Your patron. What do I do? You serve her. A tray appeared in his hands. On it, a plate of food molded from his memory. A tuna sandwich. A steaming cup of coffee. And a vial filled with gray viscous fluid, memory extract. Kyle trembled as he walked it over. The woman didn't look at him until he placed it before her. Then she whispered, You could have saved me. I know, he choked. You saw me, she said. I waved. I was tired. I had a deadline. You watched my headlights flicker out. Kyle knelt beside her. I'm sorry. Gloria didn't eat the food. Instead, she picked up the vial, drank it, and her form shimmered. She slowly dissolved into ash, smiling faintly. Then she was gone. Only the tray remained. Betty's voice rang through the diner. One down. Hundreds to go. More tickets printed. Table 4, Tommy Gleason. Table 12, Rachel Morrison. Table 5, Jacob Morgan. Kyle paused at the last name. Jacob Morgan. His father. The man he left alone in a hospital bed while chasing a job across the country. No, Kyle whispered. The air thickened. The bell rang again. Ding, ding, ding. Rhonda passed by with her own tray, her eyes hollow but her face oddly kind. We all serve someone. Don't try to fight it. Just remember them. It helps. Kyle clutched the new ticket. Outside the diner, highways twisted like serpents across the stars. Other diners blinked in the dark, reflections of this one. He wasn't alone. But he was bound. In time? It would always be 2:17 a.m. The order bell rang again. Ding, ding, ding. Kyle didn't move. He stood in the center of the diner's greasy kitchen, clutching the slip that had just come through the tiny metal window. His fingers trembled as he read the name scrawled in thick red ink. Table 5, Jacob Morgan. His father. The man he hadn't seen since the day he chose work over goodbye. The man he abandoned in a hospital bed lit only by a fading afternoon sun and a dying heart monitor. Kyle swallowed hard. He pushed through the swinging doors and stepped back into the diner, except now it wasn't the same. The lights flickered like distant stars about to vanish. The checkerboard floor stretched and curled as if folding in on itself. Every other table was now empty. Except table 5. There, sitting upright, was his father. He looked older, thinner, but wore that same tired smile. Not angry. Not disappointed. Just knowing. Hey, son, Jacob said softly, his voice carrying across the room like a prayer. Kyle approached with a tray, one bowl of tomato soup, one cracked coffee mug filled with black sludge, and a single burnt grilled cheese. It was what he used to make for his dad when he was sick. I'm sorry, Kyle whispered. I should have been there. Jacob gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. You've been standing too long. Kyle hesitated, then sat. For the first time since he entered this place he felt real. Like blood moved through his veins again. Like he could breathe. Jacob picked up the coffee mug, sniffed it, and grimaced. Still can't cook worth a damn, huh? They both laughed. Kyle's eyes welled with tears. I kept waiting for some kind of punishment, Kyle said. A reckoning. A demon. But it's worse than that. It's just me. My guilt. Jacob nodded. Son, hell doesn't have pitchforks. It's the place where you never forgive yourself. Where time freezes at 2:17 a.m. forever. Kyle blinked. 2:17 a.m. That cursed time burned into every clock in the diner. Then why are you here? Kyle asked. His father leaned in. To remind you that it's okay to let go. He slid a folded napkin across the table. Kyle opened it. Inside was a child's drawing, stick figures, one big, one small, holding hands. A house. A dog. A sunny sky. And written in crayon, "I love you, Dad." Kyle's breath caught in his throat. "I kept that," Jacob said. "The day you drew it, you were crying because your toy broke. But I didn't care about the toy. You cared enough to draw me this. That's all I remember, Kyle. Not your mistake. Just the love." The lights in the diner flickered once more, then faded to sunrise. The bell over the door chimed a final time. The chairs were gone. The tables disappeared one by one. The diner, once a trap of eternal guilt, was unraveling. "You're done serving," Jacob said, standing up. "It's time to go." Kyle stood stunned. "Where?" His father smiled. "Anywhere. As long as it's forward." Kyle turned around, and the diner was gone. He stood on the side of a real Texas highway. Early morning light poured across the road. His truck was parked nearby, dusty but waiting. His phone buzzed. One missed call from Emily, his sister. The one he stopped talking to after their father died. Kyle looked at the screen, then up at the sky. He answered. "Hey," he said, voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I miss you." A long silence. Then her voice. "Kyle? Oh my God, are you okay?" Kyle looked back one last time. The diner was nothing but dust blowing across the asphalt. "I think I finally am." Epilogue. The diner is no longer there. Maybe it never was. Perhaps it was just a manifestation of guilt, memory, and the soul's desperate need for forgiveness. But if you ever find yourself driving a dark highway in the dead of night, and you see neon lights flickering in the mist, and a clock that always says 2:17 a.m., ask yourself, who do you need to forgive? And more importantly, can you forgive yourself? This story is a work of fiction.